This is Que Esperanzas, a new series from Book Public from Texas Public Radio. The expression Que Esperanzas is an ironic or pessimistic interjection meant to convey that there's little hope or an improbability of success. Book Public's Que Esperanzas series focuses on short stories with protagonists who are women surviving catastrophic injustices in their everyday lives. This week's story is Nature Exchange by Sindya Bhanoo.
Nature Exchange. Behind the tennis courts, Veena finds the grassy clearing that has been fruitful for her. Since her move to the area a week and a half ago, she has found a dead monarch with its wings intact and half a mouse skull. Today, she has less luck. She picks up a handful of green-capped acorns and 2 pine cones. Then she spots something shiny in the grass. An iridescent abalone shell, surely dropped by a child who brought it back from a beach vacation in Florida or California. Hi. She turns to find a boy, hardly 4 years in age, standing behind her. He has bright eyes. Brown eyes. What are you doing? He asks. A sweatband made of blue terry cloth keeps his long blonde hair out of his eyes. A woman, her figure flat as a pancake, stands at his side. Sorry, she says to Veena. The woman raises her eyebrows and offers Veena a knowing smile, at once both apologetic and proud. He likes to talk. I dropped something, Veena says to the boy. I can help you find it, the boy says. I'm good at finding things. She thinks about giving him the shell. It is in her right fist, its edges pressed against her palm. With her other hand, she massages her side. She has an ache in her hip that she notices only when she stops moving. Finders keepers, a voice in her head says. No, you can't, she says out loud. She massages her hip again. The boy watches her do this. His mother takes hold of his hand. We should go, she says. Finish our walk and let this nice lady finish hers. The boy persists, even after Veena turns to leave. What did you lose?
So many ideas in motion. I mean, just that first page and a half. Tell us a little bit about the story, maybe just summarize the story for our readers maybe who haven't read the story yet.
Okay. Nature Exchange, the protagonist of Nature Exchange is a mother, a woman named Veena, and her young son is dead, and 2 years have passed since his death, but her life is dominated by her grief. And we learn as the story progresses that her son died in a school shooting. And his death has kind of led to the disintegration of her marriage. And at the start of the story, she's newly separated and has just moved into a house of her own located very close to the nature center, where there's a place called the Nature Exchange, where children can trade natural objects in for other objects, trade in things they find like rocks and shells. And Veena, the mother, has a kind of obsession with this place, an obsession with going to this place. And we learn that she wants to trade in enough objects to get enough points to get a pair of antlers that her son, who has died, really wanted.
That Nature Exchange place is so interesting to me that I wondered, is that based on a real place?
It is. There's a Nature Exchange in Austin at the Nature Center, and children can go in and exchange objects. And I've been to other Nature Exchanges. There's one in the Atlanta area. They're all over the country. And the first time I went, I was so fascinated by the idea. It's such a delightful concept that children can go out and explore nature and be curious about nature and observe nature and find things and then take them in. and trade them out for other beautiful objects. And it kind of, you kind of see the life cycle at these nature exchanges. There's shells, which creatures have left. There's butterfly wings. There's rocks. There's fossils. It's a really kind of fascinating place to explore.
Yeah, and you can imagine how it would capture the imagination of somebody like young Neil, who, in this exchange that he has with Rosemary, the woman who works there, there's this whole discussion of, quote, wonder can be as ordinary as a piece of gravel. And these little treasures that he's able to find and come in and exchange or find other things at the nature center. And he has this interesting idea about the dichotomy between the non-living and the living. The non-living things cannot grow, move, or breathe. And then the living things, interestingly, anything that has ever needed food and water and produced waste. So then it goes, a dead thing is living because it was once alive. It's just this profound idea that you sort of carry through the story as we're sort of walking through this, disastrous space for our poor protagonist, dealing with such an insurmountable loss with her little boy having died. But I do want to go to the idea of the school shooting. I know you're also a journalist, and so mm-hmm. I wondered if there was something maybe even back from Sandy Hook or something when you were working on this. How did you come to this detail, which unfortunately for us in 2022 is not this. Unfortunately, it's not an uncommon thing, right? It's just something that we've grown so accustomed to hearing about. But I did wonder how that detail came to be with the death of Neil.
In earlier drafts of the story, Vina had lost her son, but it wasn't. It wasn't clear to me until later on that it was a school shooting, and I don't. I didn't wish for it to be just a kind of plot point for my story. It's such an immense, horrific. It's an immense loss and a horrific way to lose a child, and I am a reporter, and there are many reporters who've reported on the recent school shooting and the many others that we've had. I think in this story I was trying to explore something else. These sort of private moments that this mother has had and has after she lost her son in this way. And I think that fiction has the power to do that. We can stay with our characters long after the tragedy has happened. This was one event, the day that her son dies, but the grief exists in every single day that follows. And I tried to stay with her and show that, like in the first passage I read, that moment, we don't know yet when we're reading the beginning of the story that she's lost her son in this way. But later we do, and we can think about what it's like to see another little boy after you've lost yours, what it's like to see other children on Halloween. And we hear parents say this line about their children, I wish they would never grow up, and what it's like for a mother to not be able to say that. And moments like when she finds a brownie in his lunchbox the day he dies, what it's like to open that, to know that he will never eat it, to see those antlers and know that she'll never see his face brighten up on the day he gets it. They'll never be his. I think that following this mother in the sort of aftermath is what I was wanting to do, which is not something that I'm always able to do as a reporter.
Oh, I can so see that idea. And I was struck by in the hospital scene when the little boy is sort of yawning and making an O, and there's like this flash to his, his babyhood, like maybe the last time he was in a hospital was when he was born, and she notices the O of his mouth. I mean, just such, gorgeous details like that of course are suffused with this unbelievable sorrow. I mean, she even thinks about, if he were alive today, he would be 9 or 10, or, these kinds of things. This idea, there's a line in the story that goes, grief is alive. I mean, she does carry this thing. It has become a part of her daily life. I thought it was so interesting, too, that Veena works this is the description from your story. It's a supply chain following the life of a product from its birth to its death. And it's sort of like the way that she has to continue to march through life and, in a sense, provide and be a functioning member of society. Like, these are all the expectations that are put upon her to comport herself as if she hasn't just experienced the most devastating thing. So there's nothing very outward for her that she does to demonstrate, her grief. And even the girl at the nature center, not Rosemary, who she dealt with for so long with the little boy, but another person who works there, just can't even perceive that anything's wrong. There's not like this extra layer of compassion that she can extend to her. But just the vividness of that inner burden that she's carrying around. And it seems like it's just affected her so much in all ways, even physically. But I want to go to this idea of loss, in the part that you read where the little boy says, "What did you lose?" All stories are about loss, and it feels like Veena has lost. It seems like she's lost everything, even for all the ways she tries to recover some normalcy. I mean, even her marriage to Mitchell is basically over. I can tell they love each other so much, and he has so much compassion for her, but they deal with the grief in such different ways. So all of these losses for Veena, and I wonder how you consider the notion of loss as so elemental in a short story.
That's an interesting question. I don't know if when I'm writing, I have that in mind. I think that I'm attempting to just chronicle the human experience, just kind of chronicle her life in the days and years after this happens. And the way you put it, that loss is part of every short story. I wonder if you could maybe say just a little bit more, and then I can think about how to answer.
Yeah. So, Frank O'Connor, the Irish writer, has a book. It's a study of the short story called The Lonely Voice, and he makes this, big declaration. All stories are about loss. We lose every day and all day. We lose, our keys, our phones, our minds. We're always sort of losing things or looking for things we didn't even know we're missing, and that creates a conflict, right? So if I just every time I read the story, well, I come away with a mountain of things every time I read the story, but the first punch in the gut is, what did you lose? When the boy says, what did you lose? And then it's just like the story, here comes the story and all of these unimaginable losses for Vina, but also, what did you find, or what are you searching for, to sort of turn the question on its head. And for me, with the story, one of the things is her relationship with Neil. One of the things that, as a reader, we get to acquire is the beauty of this relationship that I think is so resonant in the ways that she can observe him, not being real clear on personal space and, being just who he is. And it's so beautiful, his, borderline obsession with these little things, these little rocks and pieces of gravel, and that for me with the story is yes, all stories are about loss, and Vina just loses and loses, and she has lost so much. But something that as a reader I carry away with me is, or I sort of gain, is just the beauty of the relationship that she had with him. And the story's not supposed to have a tidy ending, but I feel like she's sort of on her way to something not redemptive, not like that, but that there's something there that she's holding on to so tightly. He's never going to be lost. He's never going to be gone. He's never, ever, ever going to be. And it goes back to this idea that he himself has about the non-living and the living. A dead thing is living because it was once alive. And that's what, for me, that's how I sort of carry the story around, is with the idea.
I think you're right. I think, she's pursuing these antlers for the duration of the story. She wants them so badly, and she is, as you say, she has a job, and she's educated and she's smart, but she thinks that these antlers, somehow getting them, will do something for her. And as a reader, we may or may not root for her. So she's chasing these antlers. We know that it's not going to solve her problem. It's not going to give her son back. And in the end, whether or not she gets them, I think you're right. I think she realizes that the relationship she had with her son is intact, even though she's giving away all those objects that he collected. She gives them away during Halloween to trick-or-treaters, even though she doesn't get the antlers in the end. That relationship is intact, and she has not recovered from her grief. She may not recover. We don't know. And her son's death has kind of left her in this void between life and death. It's almost like she's moving around the world like a ghost, or at least like a human, kind of drained of life, but not of breath. But she, I think by the end, I think that's where she is, that that relationship is intact, even though so many other things are taken from her. The many moments she won't have, these experiences she won't have with her son.
I love this idea of that it's sort of like some of the things that she's bereft of in her daily life could happen as a consequence of any other kind of loss. It doesn't have to be, this huge thing like the death of her son. And that's what makes the story so resonant, because I was thinking about how, let's say, even if she had she had possession of the antlers, she would know that there's more searching to do. There's still a void. There's still a huge gaping hole to fill. And Mitchell, he's so compassionate that he's like, oh, I'll pay anything. I'll go get them for you. And we know as readers, I think, that even if we don't know, did they get them? Did they not get them? There's another obstacle there. There are more things in the way. And that's just how life is, that's just how life works. The other thing, and it's such a small thing, but like acorns, like now, I read this story weeks and weeks ago, but now the first time, and I've read it many times since, but every time I think about an acorn or see an acorn, I think about Neil, and I'm just like, oh, that's so ordinary. Acorns are so ordinary, because that's what that's how he felt about them, because it wasn't going to exact some tremendous amount for him at the nature center. It's just such a beautiful story in that way of the memories that she has of hanging out with him and his idiosyncrasies and those kinds of things. It's just such a beautiful story.
And I think, we talked about all these losses, but with losses, there are also gains. I mean, that is the way life works, and that is the complexity of life, that we get things and we lose things. And in this story, although it's about a mother who's lost her son in this very tragic way, I think we also see we also see some gains. She has a moment of connection with this older woman who works at the Nature Exchange. There is an understanding between them, and this is a woman who knows Neil and who saw her son alive, and that is very meaningful. And in the pursuit of the antlers, although she does not get her husband back, she gets back the man who is her son's father. Their marriage is over, and we see that it's over, but there's a compassion between them that we see in another moment of connection, and those are gains in a life, in a life that may seem so tragic. It's not. I don't think that she's in a hopeless situation.
Sindya Bhanoo, thank you so much for talking to me today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Yvette. It was great to talk to you too.
Sindya Bhanoo is the author of the story Nature Exchange. It can be found in her collection of stories titled Seeking Fortune Elsewhere. This has been Que Esperanzas, a series focusing on short stories with protagonists who are women surviving catastrophic injustices in their everyday lives, on Book Public from Texas Public Radio. Write to us at bookpublic@tpr.org. Jacob Rosati composed our theme music. Dan Katz is Texas Public Radio's news director. We had help from David Martin Davies. I'm Yvette Benavides.